My brother hid my father's final letter for 7 years. When I finally read it, everything changed. My father died on a Tuesday morning in late October, when the leaves outside our family home had turned the color of rust and old gold. I still remember the smell of that hospital room. Antiseptic. Cold coffee. Rain on my jacket. And underneath all of it, the quiet, impossible smell of goodbye. Dad had been sick for almost a year, though he never let anyone call it that. He called it a rough patch. He called chemotherapy a tune-up. He called the cane he eventually needed a temporary inconvenience. That was my father, Daniel Mercer. Proud, stubborn, and somehow still the strongest man in the room even when he could barely stand. My older brother, Grant, stood on the other side of the bed with his arms folded, looking irritated more than heartbroken. My mother, Evelyn, sat in the corner twisting a tissue between her fingers, crying in that controlled way she always did, like even grief had to obey her rules. And me? I was holding my father's hand. His fingers were thin by then, nothing like the hands I remembered from childhood. Those hands had built our porch, fixed my first bicycle, held mine when I was scared of thunder, and rested on my shoulder the day I graduated high school. That morning, those hands barely moved, but his eyes did. They found mine. "Caleb," he whispered. I leaned closer. "I'm here, Dad." His voice was rough, like every word cost him something. "Don't let them make you believe you were less." I froze. Across the bed, Grant's expression sharpened. Mom looked up quickly. "Daniel, don't start this now." Dad ignored her. His eyes stayed locked on me. "There's a letter," he whispered. "For you." My chest tightened. A letter? His lips trembled as he tried to speak again, but the machines around him began to change their rhythm. A nurse stepped in. Mom stood. Grant muttered something under his breath. I kept holding Dad's hand. "Find it," he said. Those were the last words my father ever spoke to me. 3 hours later, he was gone, and 7 years passed before I learned what he had been trying to tell me. At the funeral, people kept saying the same things. He was a good man. He worked hard. He loved his family. I nodded when I was supposed to, shook hands when people reached for mine, let distant relatives hug me while I stared past them at my father's casket and tried to understand how the world could still be moving. Grant played his role perfectly. The grieving oldest son. He stood beside Mom, one hand on her shoulder, accepting condolences like he was the head of the family now. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his dark blonde hair styled neatly, his jaw tense in a way that looked noble if you didn't know him. But I knew him. Grant had always been good at looking like the man everyone wanted him to be. Responsible. Confident. Successful. The son who made Mom proud. I was the younger brother. The quiet one, the one who left town after college, took a job in construction management, and built a life that didn't revolve around our family name. Grant stayed close. Not because he loved them more, but because he understood something I didn't back then. Control belongs to whoever stays nearest to the money. After the funeral, we went back to the family house. The same old white colonial with blue shutters where Grant and I had grown up. The place smelled like casseroles, perfume, and grief. Neighbors filled the kitchen. Relatives crowded the living room. People whispered in corners. I stayed near the hallway, unable to breathe inside all that sympathy. At some point, I saw Grant go upstairs. Something in me remembered Dad's final words. "There's a letter. For you. Find it." I followed a few minutes later. Dad's office was at the end of the upstairs hallway. When I reached it, the door was half open. Grant was inside. He was standing at Dad's desk with a small wooden box in front of him. Dad's old cedar document box. I recognized it immediately. He kept important papers in there: insurance policies, birth certificates, deeds, old family photographs. Grant had something in his hand. An envelope. My heart jumped. "What are you doing?" I asked. Grant turned too fast. His face changed for half a second. Surprise. Then irritation. "Looking for paperwork," he said. "What paperwork?" "Estate stuff." Mom asked me to help. I stepped into the room. Dad told me there was a letter. Grant's eyes narrowed. "A letter? For me?" He looked down at the envelope in his hand, then back at me. "This?" he said. I took a step forward. He pulled it slightly away. "It's nothing," Grant said. "Just old bills." "Then give it to me." His mouth tightened. "Caleb, Dad died today. Are you seriously going to start acting paranoid?" "I'm not acting paranoid. He told me there was a letter." Mom appeared in the doorway then, like she had been listening. "What's going on?" she asked. I pointed at Grant's hand. "Dad said he left me a letter." Mom's face went still. Not confused. Not surprised. Still. Then she sighed. "Your father said a lot of things near the end. He was on medication. He knew what he was saying." "Caleb," she said, in that voice she used when she wanted to make me feel like a child. "Today is not the day." Grant slipped the envelope behind a stack of papers on the desk. I saw it. He saw me see it. But Mom stepped between us. Go downstairs, she said. People are waiting. I should have pushed harder. I should have walked past her, grabbed the envelope, and opened it right there. But grief makes you weak in strange ways. And all my life, I had been trained to step back when Mom chose Grant. So I stepped back. That was the first time my brother took my father's final letter from me. It would not be the last. 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, we met with the attorney. His name was Mr. Alden, an old friend of Dad's with silver hair and kind eyes. His office was downtown, overlooking a narrow street lined with maple trees. Mom sat beside Grant. I sat across from them. That arrangement said everything. Mr. Alden cleared his throat and opened a folder. Daniel's will is straightforward, he said. Grant leaned back like he already knew what was coming. Mom looked at her lap. I looked at the folder. My father had not been a rich man, not in the way people imagine wealth. He owned the family home outright. He had savings. A life insurance policy. A small commercial property on the edge of town that he'd bought years ago. And Mercer Hardware, the store he had inherited from his father and kept alive for 40 years. I had worked there every summer from age 12 to 20. Grant had worked there for 6 weeks one summer and quit because he said the customers were beneath him. Mr. Alden read the will. The house went to Mom for her lifetime, then to Grant. The commercial property went to Grant. The hardware store went to Grant. Most of the savings went to Mom. I received Dad's old truck, his tools, and a small account with $8,000 in it. Grant got almost everything. I remember staring at the attorney, waiting for him to say there had been a mistake. He didn't. Mom reached over and patted my hand. Your father knew Grant would keep things stable. Grant looked down, pretending to be humble. Mr. Alden glanced at me, and for a moment I thought he looked uneasy. I asked, was there a letter? The room went quiet. Mr. Alden paused. A letter? My father told me he left me a letter. Mom exhaled sharply. Caleb, please. Grant shook his head. You're embarrassing yourself. But Mr. Alden looked through the folder. There was no letter provided to my office, he said carefully. Did Dad mention one to you? His hesitation was tiny. But I saw it. He mentioned he had written some personal notes, Mr. Alden said. But nothing was filed with the will. Mom stood. Then there's nothing to discuss. I turned to her. You knew. Her eyes flashed. I knew your father wanted peace. And I know you're about to ruin that because you can't accept that Grant was trusted with more responsibility. There it was. The sentence I had heard in 100 different forms my entire life. Grant was responsible. Grant was capable. Grant was the son who deserved trust. And me? I was supposed to accept whatever was left. After the meeting, Grant followed me into the parking lot. He smiled then. Not sadly. Not kindly, triumphantly. You should be grateful, he said. Dad could have left you nothing. I looked at him. What was in that envelope? His smile faded. You're still on that? I saw it. You saw what you wanted to see. Dad told me to find it. Grant stepped closer. Dad was dying. Caleb. People say nonsense when they're dying. Not Dad. For 1 second, something ugly moved across Grant's face. Then he laughed. You always thought there was some secret reason you mattered more than you did. I didn't answer. He leaned in and lowered his voice. Here's the truth. Dad chose me. Mom chooses me. The family chooses me. Learn to live with it. Then he got into his car and drove away. That night, I sat in Dad's old truck with my hands on the steering wheel and cried like I hadn't cried at the funeral. Not because of the money. Not really. It was the final confirmation of something I had felt since childhood. That I had loved my father deeply, but maybe he had never loved me enough to fight for me. For 7 years, I carried that belief like a stone in my chest. Grant sold the commercial property within 6 months. He said he had strategic plans for the money. A year later, Mercer Hardware was gone. Not closed. Sold. To a regional chain that turned it into a discount home supply store and stripped my grandfather's name off the sign. When I found out, I drove 3 hours back to town and confronted him in the parking lot. You sold Dad's store? Grant was wearing sunglasses and a watch that looked ridiculous on his wrist. It was underperforming, he said. It was our family's store. It was my store. Dad spent his life there. Dad is dead. I almost hit him. I mean that. For the first and only time in my life, I came close. Grant must have seen it because he stepped back. You need help, he said. This obsession with Dad is pathetic. I looked past him at the building where Dad had taught me how to sweep sawdust, count change, shake a man's hand, and treat every customer like they mattered. The new sign looked cheap and bright. Something inside me went cold. That was when I stopped coming home. For the next several years, I built my own life far away from them. I worked hard. Harder than I probably needed to. I took contracts nobody wanted. Small housing developments. Commercial renovations. Storm repairs. Anything that would teach me something. Eventually, I started my own project management firm, Mercer Build Solutions. I used my father's last name because, no matter what the will said, I was still his son. The company started with me, a laptop, a borrowed office, and Dad's old truck. By year 3, I had 5 employees. By year 5, I had 22. By year 7, we were handling mid-sized commercial projects across 3 states. I wasn't famous. I wasn't a millionaire in some dramatic movie way, but I was stable, respected, free, and I had stopped waiting for my family to apologize. Then my mother called. It was a Thursday night in March. I was in my kitchen, eating takeout noodles over the sink after a 12-hour day, when her name appeared on my phone. Mom. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. She called again. Then again. Finally, I answered. Caleb, she said. Her voice sounded older. What is it? A pause. Grant is in trouble. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. What kind of trouble? He made some bad investments. Of course he did. Don't be cruel. I set the noodles down. Why are you calling me? We may lose the house. That got my attention. The family house? Yes. How? Silence. Mom. She inhaled shakily. Grant borrowed against it. I closed my eyes. Dad had left the house to Mom during her lifetime. Grant wasn't supposed to be able to touch it unless she agreed. You signed something, I said. He said it was temporary. How much? Another pause. $480,000. I didn't speak for several seconds. Caleb? You let Grant borrow almost $500,000 against Dad's house? He said he had a business opportunity. Grant has never successfully run anything in his life. He was trying. No. He was gambling with what Dad left behind. Her voice sharpened. Your brother made mistakes, but he is still family. There it was again. Family. A word that somehow always meant I had to sacrifice and Grant had to be saved. What do you want from me? I asked. She softened instantly. You've done well for yourself. I laughed then. Once. Bitterly. You want money. I want to save your father's house. You mean the house Dad left to Grant? Caleb, please. No. The word came out before she could finish. She went silent. No? She repeated, like she had never heard me use that word before. No, I said again. I'm not paying for Grant's mistakes. You would let me become homeless? I would let Grant face consequences. He's your brother. He hid Dad's letter. The moment I said it, the line went dead quiet. Too quiet. My heart started pounding. Mom. I said slowly. What was in that letter? Her breathing changed. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes. You do. No. I don't. You hesitated. I'm tired. This was a mistake. Mom. But she hung up. The next morning, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in years. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The white paint was peeling near the gutters. The blue shutters had faded. Weeds grew through cracks in the driveway. Dad would have hated that. He had always believed a home told the truth about the people inside it. I parked at the curb and sat there for a moment, looking at the porch where Dad used to drink coffee every morning. Then I got out. Mom opened the door before I knocked. She looked thinner. Her hair, once dark and perfectly styled, was mostly gray now. But her eyes were the same. Guarded. What are you doing here? She asked. I want to see the loan documents. Her mouth tightened. This isn't your business. You called me asking for money. That makes it my business. She stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like dust and old furniture polish. Family photos still lined the hallway, but I noticed something immediately. Most of mine were gone. Grant's wedding photo was still there, though he had divorced 3 years earlier. His college graduation. His business award from some local chamber event that probably didn't mean anything. My high school photo remained at the end, half hidden behind a vase. I almost smiled. Some things never change. Grant was in the kitchen. He looked worse than I expected. He had gained weight. His face was puffy. His expensive confidence had worn thin around the edges. But when he saw me, he still tried to sneer. Well, look who finally came back. I ignored him and put my hand out. Documents. Grant laughed. Still acting like you're in charge? I'm not paying a cent until I know what happened. You're not paying a cent anyway, he said. You never cared about this family. I looked at Mom. Documents. She brought them from a drawer with shaking hands. I sat at the kitchen table and read. The situation was worse than she had admitted. The loan had been taken 18 months earlier. The payments were months behind. Foreclosure proceedings had already begun. But that wasn't the strangest part. The property transfer language looked wrong. I read it twice. Then a third time. Why does this say Grant has remainder interest under the revised estate addendum? I asked. Grant stiffened. Mom looked away. I turned the page. There it was, a document I had never seen before. A codicil, signed by my father 3 weeks before his death. It confirmed the house would pass to Grant after Mom. But something about the signature made my stomach turn. It didn't look right. Dad's handwriting had been strong even when his body was weak. His capital D always leaned sharply left. His M in Mercer had a distinctive loop. This signature looked like someone trying to remember those details. Badly. Where did this come from? I asked. Grant snatched the papers from the table. It's legal. I didn't ask if it was legal. I asked where it came from. Mom whispered, Grant handled it. I looked at my brother. And suddenly, the final letter came back to me. The envelope. The desk, Grant's hand. Mom's expression. Mr. Alden's hesitation. I stood slowly. I want Dad's cedar box. Grant laughed too quickly. What? The document box from his office. No idea where it is. Yes. You do. He stepped toward me. You come back after 7 years and start throwing accusations around? You forged something. His face changed. Not much. But enough. Mom gasped. Caleb. I pointed at the papers. That signature is wrong. You're not a handwriting expert, Grant snapped. No. But I knew Dad. For a second, nobody moved. Then Grant leaned close and said quietly, You always thought knowing him mattered. It didn't. I stared at him. And for the first time, I saw fear behind his arrogance. That was when I knew. The letter still existed. I left the house and drove straight to Mr. Alden's office. He was older now, thinner, but he remembered me immediately. Caleb, he said, standing behind his desk. It's been a long time. I need to ask you about my father's will. His expression darkened slightly. Sit down. I didn't. Did my father write me a letter? Mr. Alden looked toward the closed door of his office. Then he said, Yes. The word hit me like a physical blow. My throat tightened. What? He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Your father told me he had written a personal letter to you. He intended to give it to you himself, but he was afraid he would not have time. Did you read it? No. It was sealed. Did you have it? He hesitated. For one day, he said. I gripped the back of the chair in front of me. What happened? Your brother came to my office 2 days before your father died. He said your father wanted the personal family letters returned to the house. He had a note with Daniel's signature authorizing him to collect them. My pulse roared in my ears. Did the note look real? Mr. Alden looked ashamed. At the time, yes, Daniel was very ill. I had no reason to suspect Grant would lie. What else did he take? Mr. Alden opened a locked file cabinet and removed a folder. I kept copies of everything official. But personal letters, no. However, he pulled out a photocopy. There was also a draft memo your father had asked me to prepare. He handed it to me. My hands trembled as I read. It was not a will. It was a note from Dad to his attorney, dated 1 month before his death. Alden, I need to revise the estate documents. I made mistakes years ago because Evelyn pushed hard for Grant to inherit the business assets. I believed Caleb would be fine because he was independent, but I see now that I confused strength with not needing love. Grant is not to receive full control of Mercer Hardware, or the commercial property unless Caleb declines his share. Caleb is to receive 50% ownership of both. The house should remain with Evelyn during her lifetime, then be divided equally between my sons, unless Grant attempts to pressure or exploit her financially. I also need Caleb to know the truth about what happened when he was 16. My vision blurred. When I was 16? I looked up. What truth? Mr. Alden was quiet. I don't know, he said. Daniel planned to explain it in the letter. I sat down because my legs stopped working. When did Dad ask you to revise the will? He called me several times. We scheduled a meeting, but he was hospitalized before we could finalize the changes. So the old will stood. Yes. And Grant knew? I cannot say what Grant knew. But he took the letter. Mr. Alden's face was full of regret. Yes. I drove to the old courthouse after that and requested copies of every property filing connected to my father's estate, the house, the store, and the commercial building. Then I called a forensic document examiner. Then I called a real estate attorney. Then I called my office and told my team I would be unavailable for 2 days. I was done being the son who stepped back. The next 48 hours changed everything. The document examiner needed original copies to make a formal conclusion, but even from scans, she told me the signature on the codicil raised serious concerns. My attorney found irregularities in the property transfer. Mr. Alden provided a sworn statement confirming Dad intended to revise his estate plan and that Grant had collected sealed personal letters under questionable circumstances. But none of that was the letter. I still needed the letter. So I went back to the house. Grant's car was in the driveway. Mom answered the door and tried to close it when she saw me. I put my hand against it. Where is Dad's cedar box? Caleb, stop. Where is it? Her eyes filled with tears. You're going to destroy this family. No. I said. Grant already did. You just kept helping him hide the wreckage. She slapped me. Not hard. But enough to silence the hallway. For a moment, we both froze. Then I said, I'm not leaving without that box. Grant appeared behind her. You need to get off this property. I looked at him. Show me the letter. His face went pale. That was the first time I had ever seen my brother truly scared. Mom turned toward him slowly. Grant? He snapped, there is no letter. I stepped inside. He moved to block me, but I walked past him toward Dad's office. The room was no longer Dad's office. Grant had turned it into storage. Old boxes. Broken lamps. Tax records. Golf clubs he probably never used. The desk was still there, though. Dad's desk. I began opening drawers. Grant grabbed my arm. Touch one more thing and I'll call the police. Call them. He didn't. Mom stood in the doorway crying silently. I searched the desk, shelves, closet, nothing. Then I remembered something. Dad had always said, the safest place to hide something is where no one impatient would bother looking. Behind the desk was a built-in bookshelf. Dad had built it himself. On the bottom shelf, one panel had always been slightly uneven. As a kid, I thought it was just bad carpentry. Though Dad never did bad carpentry. I knelt and pressed the corner. Nothing. Grant said, you look insane. I pressed harder. The panel clicked. Mom made a small sound behind me. Grant lunged. Too late. The panel opened. Inside was the cedar box. Dusty. Untouched. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Grant reached for it, but I grabbed it first. Give that to me, he said. His voice was no longer smug. It was desperate. I opened the box. Inside were old photographs, Dad's military discharge papers, my grandfather's watch, and a stack of envelopes tied with twine. On top was one envelope. Yellowed with age, my name written across the front in Dad's handwriting. Caleb. I stared at it. 7 years. 7 years of believing my father had chosen Grant. 7 years of thinking I had been left with scraps because that was all I deserved. My hand shook so badly I almost couldn't open it. Grant whispered, Caleb, don't. That was what made me tear it open. The letter was 4 pages long. Dad's handwriting filled every line. My son Caleb, if you are reading this, then I failed to say these words to you while I was still here. That failure is mine, not yours. I need you to know first that I am sorry. I let your mother convince me that peace in the house was more important than fairness. I let Grant's anger, jealousy, and entitlement shape decisions that should have been made with love and courage. I told myself you were stronger, so you needed less. That was cowardice dressed up as faith in you. You were never less loved. You were the son who stayed gentle in a house that rewarded cruelty. I stopped reading. The room blurred. Mom covered her mouth. Grant stared at the floor. I forced myself to continue. When you were 16, the money from your college savings did not disappear because of medical bills, as you were told. Grant took it. He forged your name and withdrew the funds with your mother's help after he crashed his car while drunk and injured another boy. We used the money to settle the matter quietly and protect Grant's future. I wanted to tell you. Your mother begged me not to. She said it would destroy the family. I see now that hiding the truth destroyed something worse. It destroyed your trust. I am sorry, son. You earned that future. We stole it from you. I sat down on the floor. Not because I wanted to. Because my body gave out. My college fund. When I was 17, I found out the account Dad had built for me since birth was gone. Mom told me Dad had needed it for medical debt from her surgery years earlier. Dad said little, just that he was sorry and would help me somehow. He never did. I worked nights through community college. Took loans. Lost my place at the state university I had dreamed of attending. And all that time, Grant had let me believe I just wasn't important enough. Dad's letter continued. I have instructed Alden to revise my will. You are to receive half of Mercer Hardware, half of the commercial property, and an equal remainder interest in the family home. I do not know if I will live long enough to sign everything properly. If I do not, use this letter as the truth I should have spoken years ago. There is something else. Grant has been pressuring me to sign documents while I am medicated. Do not trust any document he produces from my final weeks unless Alden confirms it directly. Caleb, if your brother hides this letter, then he is proving exactly why I wrote it. Do not let them shame you into silence. You owe this family love if love is returned. You do not owe them your life. Build something honest. Live free. And know that I loved you more than my weakness allowed me to show. Dad. By the time I finished reading, I was crying. Not quietly. Not gracefully. 7 years of grief came out of me in one broken sound. Mom was sobbing now too. Caleb, she whispered. I'm sorry. I looked up at her. But I didn't see my mother. I saw the woman who had helped steal my future and then let me believe I had disappointed my father. Grant said. That letter doesn't prove anything. I turned to him slowly. He stepped back. I held up the pages. It proves enough. He pointed at Mom. She agreed to it. Dad agreed to it. Don't put this all on me. Mom flinched like he had struck her. And there it was. The golden child, finally cornered, throwing the woman who had protected him his entire life into the fire. You hid this, I said. Grant's face twisted. Because Dad was sick. He was confused. He wanted to ruin everything. No. I said. He wanted to tell the truth. The truth? Grant laughed, but it sounded broken. You want the truth? Fine. You were always his favorite. The room went silent. I stared at him. Grant's eyes were wet now, furious and childish. He looked at you like you were good. Like you were better than me. Mom saw it too. That's why she protected me. Because he never really did. Mom whispered, Grant. He spun on her. Don't act innocent. You loved having me need you. You loved making Caleb the strong one so you could keep saving me. I stood, folding Dad's letter carefully. For the first time in my life, I felt no need to argue. Grant had finally said the quiet part out loud. He hadn't hidden the letter because Dad didn't love me. He had hidden it because Dad did. The legal process took nearly a year. I won't pretend it was clean. It was ugly. Painful. Expensive. Grant fought everything. He claimed the letter was fake, until the handwriting expert confirmed it was authentic. He claimed Dad had been mentally incompetent, until medical records and witness statements showed Dad was lucid during the period when the letter was written. He claimed the codicil was valid, until the forensic examiner found evidence that the signature had likely been traced. The old settlement from Grant's drunk driving incident was harder to uncover, but not impossible. Money leaves footprints, so do lies. By the end, Grant wasn't just facing civil liability. He was facing criminal investigation for forgery and financial fraud. Mom avoided charges only because I refused to pursue them against her. Not because she deserved mercy. Because I needed freedom more than revenge. The court could not fully rewrite the past. Dad had died before signing the revised will, and not every asset could be recovered. Mercer Hardware was gone. The commercial property had been sold. Much of the money Grant inherited had vanished into failed investments, luxury spending, and debt. But the forged codicil was invalidated. Grant's claim to the house collapsed. Mom retained the right to live there, but after her death, the property would be divided according to the original legal structure before Grant's manipulation, and with the settlement we reached, my interest was finally recognized. Grant had to repay a portion of the stolen college fund, adjusted through the civil settlement. Not all of it. Not enough to buy back my 20s. But enough to prove I hadn't imagined the theft. Enough to put the truth on paper. And sometimes paper matters. The day everything was finalized, Grant waited for me outside the courthouse. He looked smaller somehow. His suit was wrinkled. His hair had thinned. The confidence that used to fill every room now hung around him like a costume he had outgrown. You happy? He asked. I looked at him. No. That seemed to surprise him. You got what you wanted. No, I said. I got what was left after you destroyed what Dad built. His jaw clenched. You think you're better than me. I think I finally stopped letting you decide what I was worth. He laughed bitterly. Dad still chose me first. That used to hurt. That sentence would have destroyed me once. But now I knew the truth. No, I said. Dad made mistakes, but at the end, he tried to fix them. You made sure he couldn't. Grant looked away. For a second, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, Mom won't survive without me. I almost smiled. Then maybe it's time you learned how to survive without using her. I walked away. A month later, Mom asked me to visit. I almost said no. Then I thought of Dad's letter, folded carefully in a fireproof box in my apartment, and I went. She was sitting on the porch when I arrived. The same porch where Dad used to drink coffee. There were 2 mugs on the small table between the chairs. You still take it black? She asked. Yes. I sat. For a while, neither of us spoke. The yard was overgrown, but someone had trimmed the weeds along the walkway. Mom noticed me looking. I hired a boy from down the street, she said. Your father would be embarrassed by the state of things. Yes, he would. She nodded. Then she said, I failed you. I didn't answer. I wish I could say I thought I was doing the right thing, she continued. But the truth is, I was afraid of Grant. Not physically. Emotionally. He always needed so much. And you seemed like you could survive anything. I looked at her. I was a kid. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. No. I said quietly. I don't think you do. She flinched, but she didn't look away. So I kept going. You saw me working nights. You saw me give up the school I wanted. You saw me think Dad had chosen Grant over me. And every time I asked questions, you made me feel selfish. She covered her mouth. I loved you, she whispered. I believe you, I said. But you loved Grant in a way that cost me. That broke her. She cried with her head in her hands, and years ago I would have comforted her immediately. I would have apologized for making her cry. I would have carried her guilt so she didn't have to. This time, I let her feel it. When she finally looked up, she said, "Can you forgive me?" I stared at the yard. The maple tree Dad planted when I was born was still there. Taller now. Wider. Its roots had cracked one edge of the walkway. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Not yet." She nodded slowly. "Can I try to earn it?" That question mattered. Not because it fixed anything. But because for the first time, she wasn't demanding. She was asking. "You can try," I said. After that, Mom and I spoke once a week. Not warmly at first. Sometimes the calls lasted 5 minutes. Sometimes less. She asked about my company. I asked if she needed help with repairs. Not money for Grant, but actual repairs. A leaking pipe. A broken railing. The roof. I didn't move back into the family. I didn't pretend everything was healed. But I allowed a small door to remain open. Grant never changed. Not really. He sent one email 6 months later. It was long, angry, and full of excuses. He said Dad had manipulated us. He said Mom had poisoned him. He said I had always wanted to humiliate him. At the bottom, almost as an afterthought, he wrote, "Maybe I should not have taken the letter." That was the closest he ever came to an apology. I did not reply. A year after I found the letter, I bought back the old Mercer hardware building. Not the business. That was gone. But the building had sat half empty after the chain store moved to a bigger location. The new owner wanted out. I made an offer through my company. The day I got the keys, I stood outside and looked at the faded outline where my grandfather's sign used to be. Mercer Hardware. I could still see it if I squinted. My operations manager asked what we were going to do with the place. I told her, something useful. 6 months later, we reopened it as the Mercer Trade Center. Not a store. A training space. We partnered with local contractors and community colleges to teach young people carpentry, electrical basics, project management, and skilled trades. We offered scholarships for students who couldn't afford tools or tuition. The first scholarship fund came from the money Grant was forced to repay. I named it the Daniel Mercer Second Chance Fund. At the opening ceremony, Mom came. She looked fragile but proud. She stood near the back, not trying to claim credit, not trying to make the day about Grant, not correcting anyone when they praised me. After the ribbon cutting, she walked up to me with tears in her eyes. "Your father would have loved this," she said. For once, the sentence didn't hurt. "I know," I said. That night, after everyone left, I stayed alone in the building. The floors were new. The walls were freshly painted. But if I closed my eyes, I could still hear Dad's voice. "Measure twice. Don't rush good work. A man's name means something only if his word does." I took his letter from my jacket pocket. I had brought it with me for the opening. I unfolded it under the soft light of the new workshop and read the last lines again. "Build something honest. Live free. And know that I loved you more than my weakness allowed me to show." For 7 years, I thought that letter would tell me why I had been unwanted. Instead, it told me the truth. That love can be real and still fail you. That parents can make terrible choices and still regret them too late. That silence protects the guilty far more often than it protects the family. And that sometimes the inheritance you are denied is not the end of your story. It is the reason you build something no one can take from you. My brother hid my father's final letter for 7 years. He thought keeping it from me would keep me small. He thought the truth would die with our father. But secrets have a way of waiting. In cedar boxes. Behind loose panels. Inside old rooms. Inside wounded hearts. And when I finally read what my father left for me, everything changed. Not because the letter gave me back the years I lost. It couldn't. Not because it made my family whole again. It didn't. It changed everything because, for the first time in my life, I stopped asking why they hadn't chosen me. And I finally chose myself.